All right, it's 5 o'clock. This is the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency. It is April 26, 2018, and we're meeting in the council chambers of the Ojai City Hall. Can I get a call to order, please? Roll call.
Dan Green.
Here.
Jim Finch.
Here.
Russ Baggerly.
Here.
Johnny Johnston.
Here. Let's all stand and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Jordan, why don't you lead us today?
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you for all being here tonight. Let's start with item 3, director's announcements and reports. We'll start with the mutuals. I was talking to Roger Essex at Hermitage. They're fine up there, plugging along like they normally do. I was discussing with the water manager at Senior Canyon. They're still repairing from the fire, a lot of burnt pipes, meters and whatnot that they're trying to put together. As far as Siete Robles Mutual Water, still going strong, no problems with their well. I haven't done a check on our depth lately, but I can kind of tell from the cost of our power that not a whole lot has changed in the last couple of months. All right, anything from Ojai Water Conservation District?
We met yesterday. Comments on the groundwater management plan that I'll give during number 7, and also discussion on riverbed things that can be done to remove non-native, but nothing formal yet.
All right, look forward to that. City of Ojai, anything happening there?
Well, as primarily our responsibility is to consume rather than to supply.
Let's have some reports about how much less you're consuming.
Well, apparently we're doing okay. At least I know at my house we are. That and according to Lake Casitas, we're within the water budget.
Is there a number? I mean, I don't know. Do you have a water budget for the city from Casitas that is
Well, you do
a
by-
benchmark you're measuring against?
By parcel.
By parcel?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Anything else on that? Okay, Casitas Mutual.
Did you get anything from Mike on the first? Okay, good. The lake level is 35.4%, which translates into 84,173 acre feet.
Do we want to read into the record the items on number 3 in our agenda? On page, it's labeled as 3 Ojai Service Area Report, which is basically the wells. It's on I have it in the agenda. It's not in everybody's agenda. It's right there.
I don't think we need to read it into the record. It's part of the record as an agenda item.
So, accepted. Item 4, basin status reports. Mr. Kerr.
Thank you very much. On the basin status, we have continued flow of surface water across the basin throughout. Typically, the driest point is right near the Grand Avenue Bridge, and we're still seeing a little bit less than 1 CFS going across there underneath Grand Avenue. That continues. It's actually flow is greater above that point and greater below that point, so we're still seeing some interaction, and the groundwater basin has been responding in kind. Today we did a reconnaissance of 3 different well sites, the Key Well, the Lago Marcino well, and also the full suite of depth discrete piezometers at the depth discrete monitoring well up at the San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds Rehabilitation area. What's interesting is that now we've seen the peak at the SASGRIP depth discrete monitoring well. When I say the peak point of storage in the basin, in the shallowest of the wells, 40 to 90 feet deep, the peak was on March 27th. It was up to 73 feet below ground surface, and it quickly receded. Similarly, in the 100 to 110-foot screened interval, the date of the peak was March 26th, so slightly preceded that above it, interestingly, up to 96 feet. So just a relatively shallow degree of saturation, which again quickly receded. The basal unit of the aquifer system there peaked about 3 to 4 days later on March 30th, and that again quickly receded. Although it still remains saturated and has a good amount of water still present there. It was up to 139 feet below ground surface. So that the idea is that this demonstrates where the zones remain unsaturated to accept flow when the spreading grounds are actually activated and water is diverted from San Antonio Creek. The bedrock unit, which is 295 feet deep there, was only 8 feet less than last year, peaking on April 4th. So it's the last to respond in that bedrock unit. It hit 164 feet below ground surface. And again, only 8 feet less than last year's relatively wet year. At the Lagomarsino well, it appears that we are nearing the peak of storage there. As of April 15th, it had begun to plateau, which is typical in that area, before the groundwater recession begins. In the Key well, and this is the one we report on the most, the peak was April 9th in an absolute fashion, but a pumping cycle and series of recovery periods following that have subdued that water level to some degree, so it may actually rise beyond that in the future. Typically, the Lagomarsino well precedes the peak in the Key well by about 2 weeks. So I would expect that once this recovery cycle in the Key well occurs toward the end of April now and into earliest May, we'll probably see the peak and be able to report on that next month. The depth to water on April 9th in that Key well was 183.2 feet, which represents about 62 to 63% of basin capacity.
What does that compare to last year?
So that is compared, we're about 36 feet, no, that's not right. On
25 feet or something different?
Yeah, we're only about 19 feet lower. Our depth to water was 146.38 feet. So we're significantly lower than that, but it's we'll see what the ultimate peak ends up being.
Okay. Any question or any more on that? Are you any questions about that?
I do, yeah. Jordan, what makes the wells that you were talking about recede quickly?
The shallow piezometers at the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds are only perforated in a relatively shallow area through which groundwater passes on its way toward the deeper, more perennially saturated portions of the basin. So there's a very quick spike of recession in a water level hydrograph of those shallow.
So it's just passing on by, right?
It's just passing on by.
Thank
And
you.
what's important is that these wells demonstrate that it is unsaturated in the same depths that correlate to where the passive recharge wells are near the spreading grounds that actually deliver the water to the basin.
And I hear a number of questions regarding the capacity based on the Key well only. Why can we rely on the Key well for that?
It has a long-standing record, for one, and it correlates very well with long-term storage records that we have in the basin. When we've done modeling incorporating every well of which we know water levels and have calculated on a cell-by-cell basis the amount of water in storage, it's that Key well area that tends to respond and be most representative of what is the basin condition.
That means to me that we can depend on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Timely question. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any other questions regarding that update on the basin? All right, real quick, was Connor, when we're going to slot him in just whenever he shows?
Yeah,
Wanna do that?
whenever he
Okay,
shows.
that works out
we'll
fine
let
for
him
me.
go.
That's perfect. Item 5, public comments on items not appearing on the agenda. I believe, Susie, did you want to say something? I can give you a couple minutes here if you want. Introduce yourself, say who you are, tell us what you want to talk about.
Well, thank you, Dan.
Mhm.
So, I was meant to be joined here by Karen Pawson of the crew, and she may walk in while I'm speaking, and she'll jump up and tell you so. Otherwise, I'll do my best to speak on her behalf as well. We were just on the phone, I'll introduce myself in a second, but we were just on the phone with Regina Hirsch, who I understand has presented information with you a couple times. And the reason for that is because I used to work at the Thatcher School, and I was instrumental, along with Tom McCormick, local marine biologist, in initiating the composting program at Thatcher. I wrote grants for that and helped to design it, and not because I'm a scientist, but because I was motivated and hired Tom McCormick really to be the scientist behind it, to do something really with the full cycle related to this permaculture idea of slow sinking spring, and also to pilot something that maybe we could continue in the valley. And so I did that a few years ago, and after that we attracted Regina into the mix, where we piloted at Thatcher a rainfall catchment system, and then the board was so appreciative and excited about the results of that they invested in the solar array that you see on that side. And so because of that experience, when I attended the Water Chautauqua and heard that funding was available, and because I've written some state funds for youth employment, that's how my background is in youth development, I thought, well, there's money available, how can the community join? What is it that we can do to be engaged? And so we looked at a grant proposal that is available through the Wildlife Conservation District. And then there's a few more coming up this summer. And we have right now, we just read about this yesterday, a 3-week turnaround to submit a 2 to 4 page initial grant. And we're meeting with Regina next week to talk about what that might be. We already have some ideas and are making calls to the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, to the Kachuma composting program. Our overall goal, and there may be sub-goals that would fit with some of your interests as well, is to scale up this composting program and to work with the local livestock and hatchery alliance to do so. The Ventura County Resource Conservation District, I'm just getting a handle on these different agencies, by the way, is already working with the horse rescue program, the coastal horse rescue program in Oakview, to use the same compost system. It's called O2 compost. It's an aerated static pile system. Very low cost, very manageable. In fact, you don't touch it at all. You set up this pipe with air that flows every 2 minutes, and in 30 days you have usable compost. Anyway, they are doing the same program, piloting as a resource conservation district for Ventura County as a demonstration project. And so we're thinking that between Thatcher on the east end and Oakview here, we're identifying the Ventura River watershed as our area, and wanting to look at what community members can do as landowners, livestock owners, stable owners, as well as nonprofits like the crew and perhaps the Land Conservancy and others, to join us in joining what we're doing.
That is the larger picture. In the short term, though, you have a need. So what is the need?
So our need will be, once we have submitted the initial application, and once it's approved, which we are talking to Regina, we expect that there's something that we can do here, we will have a need for further grant writing to really scale it up and have a full plan by July. And there's a second grant application due in July as well.
Okay.
And so the crew doesn't have funds for this. I'm a local resident. I would be volunteering my time. If there are funds available, or if there's a way, or anyone here who's interested in this, to help support Regina and a few of us to write these grants, we would appreciate it.
Okay, because the way our agency works is because we can't get on an agenda in order for us to discuss it and have it as an action item. I wanted you to have this opportunity to be able to say it to who's listening, so that perhaps an angel can come and save you and get that accomplished for you.
Yes,
So,
Yes. And speaking on behalf of Karen, if you're not, in case you're not familiar with CREW, CREW is Concerned Resources Environmental Workers. They hire kids from low-income backgrounds to do environmental work, conservation work. They've been going for years and years. The horse shows that are available here in the Ojai Valley is because of that group. And they would actually help make us even more eligible for grants like this because of the population that they're working with. And so it really sort of steps up our game, and also because of the longevity of their program.
and if someone wants to contact you, how can they?
They can contact me through CREW, Karen Bosson. So you can look up CREW. Karen Bosson is the new executive director there. And Karen and I worked together to found the Ojai Valley Youth Foundation 20 years ago. We've done a lot of community work on this.
And now you have to say your full name.
And my full name is Susie Nixon.
Thank you, Susie.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions, or just, and there you go.
If
Thank you for-
anybody here doesn't know who the CREW is, they shouldn't be here.
There you go. That's basically, yeah, exactly right. Thank you very much.
Come in, so you can chat with her as well.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.
Item 6, consent items. Let's review and approve the minutes to the meeting of March 29th, 2018.
You need a motion?
Need to entertain a motion to approve.
Okay, I so move.
First from Mr. Johnson, second.
Second.
Jim, I just lost your last name there for a second. Mr. Finch, have a roll call, please.
Director Johnston,
Yes.
Director Baggerly,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Bean.
Yes, I am Director Bean today. Couldn't get our last names organized. Item 4 is the treasurer's report for March 18th. We've got a budget spreadsheet and an extraction charges by period. I reviewed it, nothing jumped out at me as extraordinary. I did note that on line item 8, that we're starting to see, line item 8, you can see the fall off from the extraction charges because we're in the odd month from February, so that's the tail end of the money coming in from the prior period. And then that picks up again, I would guess, right? In April, we'll start seeing the cycle back up and then cycle back down over the next 3 months.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to take, accept as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And did you get your first and seconds there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
First from Mr. Finch, second from Mr. Baggerly. Roll call, please.
Director Johnston,
Here.
Director Baggerly, Director Finch,
Yes.
Yes.
Director Bean.
Yes. All right, item 7, public hearings. We're gonna have our public hearings tonight on the groundwater management plan, which I need to get in front of me here, excuse me. We have one speaker card for this, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 written responses to the draft. We have one from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We have comments from the Surfrider Foundation. We have comments from Ventura Water. We have comments from the Upper Ventura River Groundwater Sustainability Agency. We have one speaker card. Is there any comments from, do you want to start with the speaker, or do you guys want to start with your comments as the directors?
I'll open the public hearing. and
Let's
hear
open it
from
up. I have a single speaker card here from Mr. Bruce Kubler. Please come up and,
I'll give you the official signed version
Thanks, Bruce.
that you have out there.
and for the record, this would be the letters that we have from Upper Ventura. I just have them in my hand. Thank you very much. All right.
By the way, the title, we don't have our letterhead all straightened out yet. We're not our title does not include sustainability. We're the Upper Ventura River Groundwater Agency.
Well, I like your logo with the river flowing out of the
It's
mountains.
the same logo, it's just slightly modified. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that our comments were prepared by our groundwater sustainability manager, Brian Boggy. And our focus is primarily on San Antonio Creek and the connection between Ojai Basin and our Upper Ventura River Groundwater Basin. So I think the comments speak for themselves. We're trying to be helpful in the comments we saw that might not bear directly on the San Antonio Creek issue, but just to make the plan stronger and a better plan, so.
I appreciate your comments.
I thought you did a good job of picking out some of the mistakes that we made in the plan, and they will be corrected and become part of the plan, as well as other comments in an appendix later.
Yeah, I will
you.
note of all the comments, yours ran to 34 bullet points, which was convenient to follow flow and understand what needed to be more organized. I appreciate that. Yes.
Thanks, Bruce.
Any other public comments? We've got one card, but we're flexible here. So anybody else want to make a comment about what we're doing here with this particular plan? Well, you guys are making it easy tonight. Anybody on the board? We've all been reviewing it, so we're going to take these comments and,
Yes, I have comments
all right.
from the Water Conservation District. I'll run through those first, and then I'll give my comments also. It was thought that farmers, the term farmers ought to be changed to just agriculture. And a word search would probably yield that to the best. In conjunctive water use management, there's a time where it just refers to farmer, and agriculture would be appropriate.
Sure.
Sorry. In key avenues for outreach and communications,
What page are you on?
I'm on 27, the way it printed out in my draft, but I know people print different.
What's the title?
Key avenues for outreach and communications. In this day and age,
Page 28.
social media, I think, is one of the key things that's used and ought to be included in that. Sorry, I skipped over one. Now going back to page 23. The contour farming practice group, that, and I know this is Jordan's big input, the 10% removal per year, I don't know, there's nobody that removes 10% per year. There's a lot, CRB, Citrus Research Board, doesn't research that much on water from that. They're more on diseases, bugs, and other things. I think NRCS, who our previous speaker was referring to, and UC Extension, I mean, they're some of your big ones for getting water efficiency and practice measurements. Even the Ventura County Irrigated Lands Group that does training, and that farmers all have to be a part of the Irrigated Lands Group. I mean, they're ones that could also be involved. I think if you're going to throw the alphabet, we ought to throw the whole alphabet.
And that's the Farm Bureau, right? The irrigated land?
Well, Ventura Irrigated Lands Group is run by the Farm Bureau, but it is a separate entity that
Okay.
is mandated by the South Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and it is our, anyway, it's the entity that keeps us in compliance,
Right.
that the growers are members of, to stay in compliance, or they have to do it on their own. And I think there's might be one or two that do it on their own. 98% of people belong.
Nancy Burchard runs it for the Farm Bureau, right?
Yes, I deal with the clerk, so I don't.
Yeah.
But they have meetings in different places and bring in the experts. So I think if we're gonna throw the alphabet, we ought to throw the full alphabet at it. And I'd be happy to
VCALC.
VCALG and NRCS. And those were the comments from the Water Conservation, Ohio Water Conservation. The other one I question it was in establishment of thresholds and triggers. And the way I read it, I don't understand when the triggers are set. What, after this is adopted, or?
We have to, that's just a skeleton,
Yeah.
Jim. We've got to, if we're going to do this, we have to develop an ordinance that would, and
So it would
there'll
be
a-
after the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
This is basically, I guess, a heads up that this is
Right.
gonna happen, and we'll pass an ordinance and we have to.
And it may not look
But-
like that when,
When it
in
ultimately
the end, yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll never have to have that problem.
And there probably will be a lot more negotiation between OBGMA and Casitas for this conjunctive use concept. There may be more to it than that, but that was kind of a skeleton of the comparison between lake levels and basin levels, and the need for similar types of regulatory actions.
And we're essentially already hitting the stage 3 section of this, right? I mean, we're down more than, we're under 4,000 acre feet of yield. So-
Right.
Any other board comments on the groundwater management plan?
The comment you made, Jim, about they don't take 10% out, is there a number that should replace the 10%? 8%, 5?
Or do they deal with contour farming at all? As a concept?
In some cases, is the answer. I think you do lose some every year, but it's probably in the 2% to 3% range that's lost and but just replanted in place without taking out, this 10%. Because to affect the design of a grove, you have to take out the grove. You can't affect change by taking out individual trees, even if it were 5% per year. What normally would happen is you might lose 2 or 3% and it's replaced in place. And then at some point, the grower makes the decision that he stops replacing and he takes out 100%.
Why is it that we see, why is it these days then that if contour farming is something that theoretically can be, when new orchards go in, they sure look straight to me?
Because that's the efficient method. But you can still do straight with
The
2% pull-offs as when you pull off the 101 onto the 33 and you look up onto the old Taylor Ranch, you see the rows going vertically up and down, but every 100 feet or whatever it is roughly, there's a 2% break that takes off the water and slows it down at the same place as what you would have as had the rows gone.
So a straight contour
Contours.
against the grade, basically.
But the water is pulled off at the same intervals.
So at what point does the efficiency of gardening in rows on flatland be overcome by the desire to contour farming, to slow sink and spread?
On the hillside, I think it's much more difficult to slow and get it to sink and spread on the hillsides versus building the retention ponds, which act as desilting ponds, in the parts where it has slowed down. Because my experience on the contours is you normally get a slough that plugs it up and it breaks it over at some point. And in working in Northern California, they've also gone to a different method because of sloughs. They've found that letting the water spill over continually so you don't have the one big break. So that's the trouble on a lot of the soils. Not so much the rocky stuff and on gentle slopes, but on steeper slopes. That's where the trouble lot comes in.
And as an alternative to that, you just have a larger sink pond in another place in the area where that water goes to.
Correct.
Didn't need to get into the weeds there, but I was listening intently there. Any other questions? All right, we'll direct staff then to take all of the comments we've had and draft the appropriate changes to the plan and bring it back to us at the next meeting for review and voting on to accept or otherwise, right?
It may take more than a month.
Well, we got time. We meet every month.
Okay.
So if you need 2 months,
We'll
take
let-
2 months. We
we'll
waited
let you
years
know.
to get it, so we can wait 2 months to get it final and get it approved.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, you may, sir.
I was kind of a little confused like you were, Jim, about the plan. Here's a plan, you're setting out stuff you're gonna do. It wasn't clear to me whether you were adopting that when you adopted the plan, or whether it would be subsequent actions, and if so, when would that happen? You might give some thought to that. I mean, if these are, some sound like the proposals from a consultant to the board, and other ones sound like there's some that the board is gonna do, but it wasn't clear which was which, and you might wanna give some thought to that to help clarify the report.
Look at the plan, sort of like a general plan. It contains goals, policies, and programs, but it doesn't implement anything. That has to be done by ordinance or resolution. Okay?
I was confused about that.
So in that regard, just to Bruce's point for clarification on those things, like the tiered level, with a single sentence at the end upon passage of ordinance.
You've got to, this plan actually doesn't implement anything. You've got to do that by our laws, which are resolutions and ordinances.
But a lot of it is just general filler. for lack-
Information.
for lack. And then there's certain sections that are gonna take the specifics.
Well,
Well-
in and of itself, it doesn't, does it, John?
No, I think what you do is, at some point, you're gonna adopt this plan, and of course, it's very broad in what it presents. I think you come back later to address Bruce's point, you develop an action plan.
Yeah.
You develop goals and initiatives and dates and, timeframes of when you think you're gonna accomplish these items. And so I think that's something we need to take, once you adopt this, we continue to look at groundwater sustainability planning through the SIGMA legislation and come back with some recommendations as far as projects and programs to implement.
And it specifically says in here, the agency will develop the procedures and pass the ordinances needed to put the conservation methods into effect. It's part of the plan. So the plan is, if we decide that we need to do something, the plan is to go to this paragraph right here and do what it says. Develop procedures and pass ordinances needed to make the conservation measures in effect. So, there's information and there's action items that tell us what action items to take if we have certain actions, I suppose.
I think the ordinance will give you the authority to implement whatever program you
Oh,
want to implement.
there's no doubt about
But
that.
then there's gonna have to be the detail of how you implement it.
Right. I thought the same thing when I read it, so that's the only reason why I read that paragraph pretty closely, because, okay, this is a concept, but when does it happen? And well, it happens when we decide that we're beyond our safe field and we make it happen. Yeah. Any other comments on the management plan?
Any other comments from the?
Any other comments from the audience?
Yeah, Connor's here.
Connor, I was actually going to let you have an opportunity to make your presentation also, but if you'd like to make comments specific about the plan, we can do that right now also. I got time for you. Yeah, so why don't you,
Well, wait, let us finish this business.
yeah, let us finish the business. Yeah, and then we'll give you, dedicate the time just to you to make the talk about what you want to present.
So you need to close the public hearing,
Close the public hearing at the advice of one of our directors. Thank you.
and then ask for comments from the board, and if there aren't any, then we'll.
Any more comments from the board? Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. Right now, yes?
Now you give direction to staff in the motion.
Can I give direction to staff in a motion that take the comments you heard tonight and report back to the board at the next meetings with those comments, either that or the next meeting after that,
With them incorporated.
incorporate them
I was gonna say,
into
well,
the
yeah.
plan? Thank you.
And I'll second that, and you can take a roll call.
Thank you very much. Apparently, we don't do this very often as me being the president, so I appreciate the guidance.
Director Johnston?
Yes.
Director Baggerly?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Brady?
Yes. Should we do that all properly? At this time, I want to have Connor Jones come on up. He is going to give us an informational presentation on slow, sink, and spread. I think I got them in the right order. If not, you'll tell me. And it was a pleasure meeting you at the Chautauqua and having you on the board. We had a few folks in here that were on, and we have a couple of them in the audience out here, so that was kind of a good time. Is your mic on? How do we get that mic to turn on? Is there a button for him?
Project.
All right, well then just project.
I can just talk.
Just emote.
All right, well, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and there's a lot of things that I feel like are important to supplement this conversation with. I obviously am just stepping in, and I apologize for being late, but I heard a little bit about the contour farming conversation, and I think that dovetails well into the slow spread sink conversation. So essentially what we want to do with stormwater or rainwater is intercept it the way that ecology does, right? So when rain falls from the sky, it's coming down at terminal velocity, and when it hits bare soil surfaces, it carries sediment with it and runs very quickly off into drainages and then into the ocean. That's not how functional ecosystems process rainwater. So typically, a raindrop falls from the sky and hits a leaf surface or soil surface organic matter, also known as duff. Like if you look in the oakwood, the leaf litter layer is about this deep, and that has to hydrate sufficiently before that surplus water can actually infiltrate and percolate deeper down into the unconfined aquifer. So what we want to do is implement strategies on the agricultural level that imitate that process, whether it's covering the soil surface with organic matter like mulch or cover cropping. Those two things alone would help with mitigating erosion and sheet flow off of orchard surfaces. In a half-inch rain event, which is quite a significant rain event, but half inch per hour, correction, we would get about 135 gallons per minute per acre, right? So on 7,000 acres of, roughly 7,000 acres of ag, if we've got in a significant rain event, which is like the 3 that we get every year, if we've got 135 gallons per minute per acre, that starts to add up to be a very significant number. And at 5% of the catchment area for the valley, agriculture is an important leverage point for where we can take stormwater and run on versus run off water that's from higher gradients and bring it into agricultural landscapes and spread it out and flash it out so that it can sink in. And this is being done in the Central Valley with some pretty interesting results in almond orchards and grape vineyards. They're noticing pretty significant aquifer recharge just from taking stormwater diversion channels and letting them flash out into reasonably flat orchards and vineyards. And depending on the soil's quality and composition, you're going to get percolation rates that are different. Fortunately, this basin is mostly alluvium that percolates quite well, so I think there's a great potential for using agriculture, which currently is one of the largest consumers of water, as really the solution for solving this deficit in water supply in the aquifer. So, does that make sense? Like using agricultural land, which otherwise would be the most significant consumer, as the actual solution set for getting water into the water table. And so we bring the water in from hardscapes, from ag drainage channels, and flash it out. The other thing that that's going to do is reduce the need for irrigation after the wet season, right? So
maybe there's a 1 month window where there's less demand from the trees or whatever vegetation is in production for agricultural water. And there's ways to do that, I think, without having to completely swap the orchard over from the existing sort of straight row model, depending on the slope. And as you were mentioning earlier, steeper landscapes are difficult to work with. Over 20% slope, it's pretty hard to mobilize any strategy to get water to stay there without having that sloughage. But down in the basin, we have the opportunity to build berms on contour, right? Just a simple berm on a contour at the bottom of an orchard, assuming there's not too much fall between the top and the bottom, can flood water over a significant area of land. And so every orchard's gonna have a different series of context-based solution sets, whether it's a berm, whether it's a few well-placed swales, which are water harvesting ditches on contour lines, or if it's just putting organic matter over the soil surface and trying to build the soil organic matter itself. So like a 1% increase in soil carbon per acre can hold 25,000 gallons more water. So if we replicate that model throughout all the agricultural landscapes, we can have a pretty significant increase in our soil sponge storage, which is beginning to replicate what ecology does with rainwater. So we want to flip the paradigm from the drain age to the retain age, and we want to switch things from the paved pipe and pollute to the slow spread sink as the new narrative for water. And the quality and quantity of water that we have in our watershed is the principal measure of how we manage land. So that's the basic gist of what I am here to represent.
And you did it well.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions.
Yeah,
if
sure.
you got any questions? We live in a small valley. We live in a small valley. I see us as a group of proactive people trying to maintain our lifestyle. Just for my education tour help here, on a scale of 1 to 10, looking just at the ag land in our valley, where are we from where you would like to see us be? 10 being you guys are killing it, 1 being nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Where are we on that scale from from where you see it?
I think it's early days right now. Scale of 1 to 10, it's on the lower end probably. But I actually have a meeting with Bob Davis next week to look at his property and hopefully implement some of these strategies. So I think there's some key members in the ag community that could be good influencers if they can establish these systems and it increases yield or decreases input costs at least, which makes the profit margin look a little better, then it's a simple thing to replicate. I mean, if it's cost effective and it supplies water or secures water for the community, then why wouldn't we do it? And I think moving into the latter stages of drought that we're afraid of moving into, stage 4 and 5, it's like, well, ag is going to take the hardest hit. And I really do think that farmers are going to start getting kind of a bad rap for water consumption, and it doesn't have to be that way. I think they could be the biggest contributors to aquifer recharge if we just made that shift in the pattern of water flow throughout their landscapes. Does that answer your question?
No, it answers. I was just trying to. I was really was curious as to from your standpoint where you saw us.
It's early days,
all right.
I'd say.
Right.
But I'm hopeful, and I think that there's a lot of things we can do quickly. And it brings me to one more thought. I think that there could be a potential incentive program where if we can actually figure out how much run-on farms are taking versus run-off they're producing, like if they're taking stormwater, slowing it down, spreading it out, and sinking it in, and we can get some kind of metric for what that looks like, that they're actually net contributors to the unconfined aquifer, then perhaps there's a rate reduction for their water, later in the season. It's hard to say how we would necessarily quantify that, but I think there's got to be some financial incentive too to make it really viable.
Well, I'll tell you, I remember what I heard Brock Dolman say. He's the guy from the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center up north. They dug a shallow ditch. It wasn't very wide, maybe 300 feet long, and he did have a metric. He did figure out how much water was saved from that simple ditch. And it was astounding. And it still is. And it's very simple. And it was dug with a shovel.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the simplest steps we can take to have the most profound effect. I mean, there's all kinds of other things that we can do that are more expensive and complex, but I really think like we might as well do this initially.
Well, what you're talking about is part of this plan, so we
Well,
appreciate
it's a variation of it.
Yeah, it's-
Actually, I think we need to slow it, sink it, spread it into contour ditches in partnership with both the city, the Watershed Protection District, and OBGMA and Connor, and figure out a plan for bringing back water into this aquifer.
Yeah. I think maybe a pilot project is in order, just to create a demonstration, perhaps. That might be a good,
That's what I'm looking for.
yeah. Well, maybe Bob Davis wants to do it.
Good.
Make it happen and come back. There's lots of money out there, and I know there's a couple of people in the audience today that you know that came in, give us a quick talk, Noah in particular, and Susie. There's some money out there, so go find it. All right, thanks, Connor, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Could I make a couple comments?
I encourage it.
So it basically is the premise behind VCALG. In VCALG, it is not about sinking the water, it's about cleaning it so that the pollutants are taken out through bioswales or whatever. And a lot of money is spent.
And what are you calling that?
VCALG, Ventura County Irrigated Lands Group, which is a mandate through the South Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. His explanation is more, but I think it is something that farmers are aware of. While I would love to see the rate differential, I don't think there's any reality in that. Most of the, well, and I won't throw a percentage, but most of what's irrigated in the East End is probably irrigated through pumped water. And Edison, it is what it is. Costs, I mean, maybe through the VCALG membership, there could be some, because that costs us about $10 or $14. Each valley, river drainage, it has a different charge based on the tests that they have to do. So I can't remember what the Ventura River watershed cost is.
Whatever it is, they don't like it much, but they pay it.
Yeah, and we're the second highest
Yeah.
compared to the.
But that's a new partner.
Yeah. So anyway, but
Okay.
Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add to what Susie said?
Well, I'm not exactly sure
What you-
I wasn't here.
she said.
But hi, I'm Karen Fossen, and I'm the executive director of the crew. And we are just in the very early stages of investigating how we can put young people to work doing conservation work, not just building trails and restoring ecosystems, but actually helping with water conservation and putting water back in the soils and keeping water clean by doing something that Thatcher did up at Thatcher School, seeing if we can replicate that with livestock owners around the valley. But it's early days, and we'd like to come back to you when we've got a little bit more happening, but we're just in the stages of really learning about what's going on and looking at a grant opportunity, actually more than one. So,
Great.
If you want to get on the agenda, just reach out and we'll make it happen.
all right,
Thank you. All right, done with the public here, on to item 8, action items. A, contract approval of J. Munding Consulting LLC agreement. Who put this together for us? The agreement, how did,
I put most of it together with Peter.
At my request.
To review it and make some revisions.
okay. Does there anybody have any concerns, comments, desires to change the contracts, desires to not have a consulting agreement? We haven't, we've talked about doing this, but we haven't, this is why it's in front of us to make a decision what we're gonna do here.
And just for the board's information, you do have an agreement with me now. It certainly was not under my LLC, because I didn't have an LLC at the time. But the agreement I have now is kind of on-call services. And this particular agreement is recommended by Director Baggerly, puts me more in a oversee role of assisting the organization.
How many hours are you billing to us now? I don't even know the rate. I just know how many hours are we looking at right now that you're currently billing?
Usually not more than about, it varies between 5 to 10 a month. I mean, I'm just not, I don't
Okay.
bill you guys for a
And
lot of
then
hours.
this
I put
agreement
time in.
allows up to 20 hours a
Up
month?
to 20, but, I'm not looking to push that envelope either, so.
Well, I'm just looking at
But if it
maximum
needs it.
case scenario so that we know that, what we're committing ourselves to. So if we're
Yeah.
gonna assign this at that rate, we're looking at,
And that hourly rate was no change from what you approved 2 years ago.
okay.
I would ask that if the board decides to approve this agreement tonight, that there's an opportunity to work with the board either through a workshop or a committee of the board, and let's put together a work plan. And I think Mr. Kier would be a part of that as well, so that we as staff would have an opportunity to understand what the board wants us to focus on and keep that moving forward. So I just don't want this to be open-ended. I want some measurable structure and goals and outcomes
Hold on.
for the board.
Hold on.
This has been a long time coming as a need for this organization. As it gets more complicated, the things that need to be done, not by me.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why you clearly have made, you brought this here and you got it organized, and it's clear because you do a lot of work that we need a staffer to do that knows what
Right.
he's doing, and John certainly knows what he's doing. I just want to make sure that we're all clear that we're committing ourselves to a maximum $30,000 a year commitment from an expense standpoint. And John's never touching the top of his work allotment anyway, but we need to, eyes wide open, that is the commitment here. So if we find ourselves in a situation where we need those hours, our budget is going to need to be addressed to accomplish those hours.
Well, and that's one of the areas I've been watching as well.
It's even easier, as I know you're watching the budget, so you'll make sure you get paid. So the money will be
Well,
there.
Not so much for that, but I think it's important. I understand an agency like this. I did some work for an agency 3 years ago that was a little water agency down in Compton area, the one that we've heard recently on the radio, the dirty water. But they had the same kind of budget constraints, and so I don't see a need to come in here and start and pad my pocket, which is detrimental to the organization. So
Yeah, just for the record, how long did you work at Las Virgenes?
I was there 16 years and 9 years as a general manager.
So 9 years as general manager, and here I am worried about the cost of hiring you to run our agency. Maybe it shouldn't be such a concern.
Yeah, we're really lucky he's close.
Excuse me.
But the difference between what we're doing now without an agreement and with agreement, John, is basically what?
Well, you have an agreement now.
Right.
This
but the
just
difference
more
between the two agreements-
defines my responsibilities and more oversight of the organization. Right now, you just kind of assign things to me as you go along, but as I understand what Director Baggerly was looking for, it's much more management oversight of the organization.
And that ultimately creates continuity. It doesn't just rely on one of us to know all the answers.
Thank God.
I appreciate you having the answers, but we don't have to make it easier.
And the
for you. Yes, sir.
difference in, I was going to say exposure, but that's maybe not the right term. The difference between what we're currently doing and the income to the group
Mhm.
versus what this would include, is that,
I think
is
we
that
have the same
30,000
exposure
with-
now, right?
Well, last year, you guys paid me about $7,000.
Right.
Okay,
so-
this would allow up to 30. You can cut those hours. I mean, whatever the board wants to do is fine with me. But I will commit to you, I'm not going to ramp up 20 hours a month.
Yeah, but I would expect that you're gonna double the hours from last year, or double the billing from last year, because, that's, the
Possibly.
purpose of this is to make it so that, you're managing this. and we-
But
would
I
expect that.
also give you a lot of free hours too. I don't
Well, we
bill
expect
every,
that too, so.
every hour I'm on the phone with CC or Russ or somebody, I don't nickel and dime the agency to death.
So in many ways, we're just formalizing an existing relationship, and we've got, at the end of the day, we can still cut the hours as we
And we're
desire
giving,
based on our
giving
budget.
him a title.
Excuse me?
We're giving him a title.
Do we get business cards and everything?
Do you currently have the insurance in place that's called for in this?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So all the demands that you have agreed to in the agreement are currently, you've fulfilled?
I have
imagine?
errors and omissions, and I have liability insurance both.
And is there any other issues from an employee standpoint we need to be worried about? Peter, CC, anybody?
Independent contractor.
Independent contractor?
This agreement is structured so that it would be clearly an independent contractor relationship, not an employee relationship.
Fantastic. Any other comments from the board?
I would move approval of item 8A.
Second?
We have Director Baggerly first, Director Johnston seconding the approval of 8A. Can I get a roll call, please?
Director Johnston?
Yes.
Director Bagger?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Green?
Yes. Welcome to the club.
And just so you know, briefly, yesterday I attended a DWR workshop for 3 hours in Satakoy related to groundwater sustainability planning, and I won't bill you for that either, so
There you go.
those are just things that,
And I didn't have to go.
yeah.
I
think it's just beneficial.
Groundwater sustainability, and I thought I was going back to Compton.
All
what I
right, thank
heard.
you. Item 8B, a discussion of the increase of ag well use for the periods of 2016 and 17. This came to me from the public, and then I brought it to the board, and it has now been shot over to Jordan, and he has offered us an email explanation. Does anybody require any additional discussion? Jordan, do you want to talk about it in any way?
For the record, he ought to tell us again what he told us.
Sure. Thank you. Last month, the eyebrows were raised at what is in this month's agenda as item 6B, namely how the difference between October, November, December of 2016, water year 2016-17, totaled 565 acre feet of extraction over that 3-month period. And in October, November, December 2017, the extraction was 1,305, nearly a tripling of the extraction. And the question was, why? How did that happen? What was going on in the basin and hydrologically in the area that resulted in that and that big delta? So, in taking a look at this, I penned the email middle of this month to CC, and just reading it out loud here. Based on our understanding of the 3 water years, 2015-16, 2016-17, and 2017-18, it is clear that the groundwater extractions from the Ojai Basin would be lower during the 2016-17 water year than in the 2017-18 water year. Clear to me. Here's why. In the summer and fall of 2016, the basin was nearing its historic lows, and well pumps were either turned off or they were needed to lift water to greater heights, which reduced their ultimate production rate. Less water was also available in the basin at the time. However, during late 2016 and early 2017, there was a significant amount of rainfall. So when you have that rainfall, a couple things are happening. One, we're getting pennies from heaven, irrigation from the sky. We always need that. It also resulted in significant amount of recharge, roughly about 3 years of supply arriving via that rainfall in 2016 to 17. So you've got the rising of water levels, you've got irrigation from the sky, people aren't pumping, water levels are coming up. However, in the fall of 2017, we're getting less precipitation, but groundwater levels remain relatively high. So there's a need for irrigation, water is pumped, and there's more water available. So with those shallower water levels, the pumps are producing more water, people are using more of that groundwater basin, which really is consistent with the groundwater management plan to use the basin water when it's available, to the point where it's, of course, managed, and when it's absent, using less of it. This is consistent with the groundwater management plan, and it bears the question, well, what about this year, the 2018 to 19 year? How are we looking that direction? Well, we've got about half of the annual rainfall. Water levels have come up a little bit, so we'll probably be somewhere between the 2016 to 17 water year and the 2017 to 18 water year. Clear enough?
It's clear, and more important, the reason this is on the agenda, and so that folks, the public know that we actually do pay attention, and this is an anomaly that just didn't look right on paper, and so that's the reason why it's in front of us right now, is all of a sudden tripled the amount of water usage, what's happening out there. So I'm glad there's an explanation for it. I'm more happy, I don't know if that's the accurate way to say that, happier that we noticed it, and that it was brought to our attention, and that we were able to drill down on it and understand exactly why it is that's happening, so.
And to that point, this is one of the reasons that the agency shifted from a twice yearly billing cycle to a quarterly billing cycle in concert with the water year. So this is something that would not have jumped out to the board or the public about 3 or 4 years ago prior to that shift.
I had noted that. That's good to know. I wouldn't have realized we probably would have noticed that previously. Anybody else have any questions on this?
I just one, does that tie in then with the stream flow measurements that the state's telling us we have to do? Because my understanding is it sort of cascades as it goes down. So if you don't use the water when it's up here, it's going to still go down. And yet if you take too much of that, the stream.
The interesting point that we're seeing with respect to the correlation between stream flow and groundwater extraction is that much of the stream flow, especially that is perennial, that exists in the summer and fall, emerges from shallower aquifers than those from which we produce groundwater. Mm-hmm. So the correlations tend to be, the recharge happens at the same time, typically in the winter, but the discharge, typically in the summer and fall, is separate. The discharge to the streams tend to be from shallower aquifers, and the discharge via pumping from the basin tends to be from the deeper aquifers, which are confined and semi-confined and disconnected from the shallow aquifers, which discharge to the stream. So really, you bring up a very good point in asking that question, although I'm not sure it was your intent, but really,
just trying to be educated.
The idea is by slowing and spreading and sinking water in the recharge areas where much of the agriculture is on the east and north ends of the basin, we're recharging both the shallow aquifers and the deep aquifers.
Right.
And by recharging locally here in town, where on the west and southern side of the basin, the soils are much more clayey and above a perching system. By recharging to that perching system, so this is the roof runoff water, the street runoff water, capturing that and allowing that to percolate, that will help sustain the stream flow on into the future and into the summer and fall months. So the disconnection is a blessing, and this is described in the management plan, but it's an opportunity to recharge separately. Mm-hmm. And with different mechanisms and different funding and different avenues of approaches, with different end game goals. One, to recharge the basin for production, and two, to recharge the shallower portions of the basin where stream flow originates.
Which is incredibly important for some of the regulators related to steelhead trout. That's what they're interested in. That's what the state board is interested in the stream flow study that's coming up. So if we can develop projects that will infiltrate to the shallower aquifers that discharge to San Antonio Creek, we're going to be in a lot better shape with the regulators.
Many of these are in the plan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for continuing to remind us of that. Any other comments on item 8B? All right, 8C, change of office location. Currently, we are renting offices from the Wild Tennis Academy. It is more, it is small.
More of a closet.
I was
than
gonna say
anything.
closet. I didn't wanna suggest that we had locked Cece in a closet to work. But it is a closet. It is not a huge office. And she has, at my suggestion, taken a look at other options, is bringing this to the board. Cece, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I just put a little bit of, cost together for what it would, the price of moving would be. And, it's the building that's in the middle of Bryant Circle, so our address, would be,
The old behavioral sciences building.
yeah, the EST building, which is
Yeah.
right in the middle of the, Bryant Circle.
Mhm.
So it'd be like 217
Oh, we're moving up on the hill.
Yeah, first floor though.
first floor. And, the rent monthly is 800, where right now it's 370. It's twice the size, and, it's a great location.
Now, are we gonna split that $800 to somebody?
Yes, we split, our rent with Upper Ventura.
So 800 becomes 400
Yes,
against our current 370?
against the 185.
Or we split the 370 currently,
Yes.
right? All right.
That's
So-
only recently, though, right?
Yeah, we've been paying 370 for quite a while. We only
So,
recently
yeah,
started
so-
splitting that, right?
So traditionally, it's just a, what'd you say,
Extra
$30
yeah,
difference?
Yeah, yeah. That's what it appears to be.
I'll move the recommended action.
I've actually looked at the space. I was there recently. It's nice. I was kind of jealous. It's nice. Because it's a nice building. Yeah, it's nice to be able to go into a building that actually has doors and an entryway and
But is there an
conference rooms.
exterior, or
No
is
students.
there access to it separately from the rest of the building?
And no screaming students, right?
No.
Yeah, you see right now with the tennis tournament. It's a separate office. Is that what you were
Well, yeah,
asking?
when you come in like to the foyer or whatever you want to call it, are you a door off of that?
No,
No.
there is an entranceway.
Mhm.
You can only get in with a key card, and, we're off in, a really big built room.
Okay.
That's still for rent,
Mm-hmm.
but it hasn't been rented in years, so then we have our own little office around the corner.
Okay, and then if they do rent it or sell the
It's month to
building?
month, and then after that, 30 days would be out, right?
Well, they promised to give us 3 months
Oh.
Mhm.
if somebody does rent the whole building, because they won't pay for it to be built out, and that would cost a lot of money. It looks like a ballroom,
Yeah, I've been in there, yeah.
and so it's, that's the agreement there.
So we have a
I'll second it.
We have a first from Director Baggerly, a second from Director Finch. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Director Johnston, Director
Yes.
Baggerly,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director
Yes. And I will note that as we got to the mundane part of our water business, we lost our audience, except for a few diehards out there.
And we would also like, I have the agreement here, we would like to move May 1st.
We've approved it. I can take care of everything you need after that. So
Thanks.
we're all good with that. So I'll take care of you and get you signed up and approved, and the rent check I'll sign when we're done here. Informational items, update on the annual water report, water year for year 2016-17. Mr. Mundy, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, the only comment I wanted to make was brief. We did file the report by the end of March, so it met the April 1st criteria. Director Baggerly gave me a comment that we needed to change a couple of things on minor editorial changes. I took care of that and refiled it, and I've let the Department of Water Resources know that we filed by the appropriate date, but there was an update, and they said, yeah, that's fine. So, so it's done. We've met that criteria for this year. We have to do this every year, and so hopefully we'll get started much sooner next year.
Yeah, I would hope that we'll develop a
Template?
template that we could just fill in the relevant data so that it doesn't take too much of your time,
Well,
John.
and I think a lot of that is there now.
Yeah.
With just a little bit of prose
Sounded
to
familiar. so-
update what happened during the year and the table updates and
Yeah.
any of
You
the.
could almost have two and just flip-flop every year and
Yeah.
just fill in.
the numbers.
Speaking of plans, anything on our alternative demonstration?
I can give you a little bit of information, I can't give you a specific, but yesterday in the workshop that I attended at DWR in Saticoy, they did say they were reviewing the alternatives. They didn't give a date when they'd be completed, but it sounded like it's probably gonna be this year. So I don't know if 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, but they are looking at them. And so we gotta kinda have to wait. The problem with it is, I'm not sure what happens if they don't approve the alternative and say, no, you're subject to a groundwater sustainability plan, then we only have until 2020 to get that complete. And it's a lot more effort and money, so that's why the
Here we just
agency-
hired a guy that can help out with that.
Well, there's things in there that I probably can't. A lot of modeling stuff has to be done. You have to take in climate change is one of the issues, and so it's, but there is money available. There are grants available from DWR staff to help with technical issues.
You may need a full-on biologist or fish
Oh,
biologist.
yeah, I mean, if that happens, it's a game changer for us, because that's a lot of work. But we'll get
You
it
say
done.
within the year, we will know whether or not we have to go the more expensive route?
Yeah, my sense was from the meeting yesterday that they're gonna have their reviews done within the next few months.
Okay. and
They didn't
then-
give a timeline, but I'll find that out and see if I can get that more definitive.
And the likelihood or the time it takes to apply for grants is what?
Well, the Prop 1 grants have already been doled out, so we've missed that window. The only thing that's available, they do have planning grants available using DWR staff. And so it's not like you'd get money, but you'd get staff resources and assistance to do certain technical analysis and administrative and outreach types of things.
If you can get them on the phone.
Yeah. But I did get some names for a regional coordinator, so we're not having to deal with Sacramento all the time. So it was worth attending the workshop yesterday. So I'm going to find out some more information, and I'll report back to the board on that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, sir. Item 9B, correspondence from a resident, Bob Daddy, regarding Casitas Mutual Water District Stage 4. This came to me as an email that had been forwarded to the folks that are noted and most of the city council. Looks like the Ojai publisher, Ojai Valley News got it, a few other folks. And it caught my eye because it kind of touched everybody here at the table. And it was this concept of, for some reason, the Ojai, well, it's hard to explain, but the concept of making the Ojai Community Facilities District, which is the rough outline of the old Golden State Water group, have a different water rate as opposed to the traditional rate that Casitas is offering. And so I saw it. Russ gave me a ring and asked me about it, and I think we were both kind of scratching our head. What do you know about this?
In my head. Now, first of all, I'd like Jordan to go over the first paragraph. Do you have it?
Sure. In fact, I read this, and I'm borrowing Director Johnson's highlighter to highlight the entirety of the concepts with which I am in agreement. I'll hold this up for the board's review,
The aquifer?
and I have stricken through everything else. It is the statement that the aquifer is 63% full appears to be correct, and I have no idea where the rest of the information originates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any comment from Casitas on paragraph 2?
Well, the old Golden State District, the Ojai Community Facilities Districts, does still need water, but we're working toward optimizing the wells so that it will be served entirely by, in fact, we just adopted a contract for a review of mutual number 6. That's the new well that they drilled,
Right,
to
wow.
wonder why it's not performing very well. And there will come a time when there's enough water coming from the basin to cover the Community Facilities District. For item number 3, Mr. Daddy seems to think that the Ojai Community Facilities District is a governmental entity, but it's not. And It does not provide water to more than 3,000 customers, and there are not more than 3,000 users there. So of course, it's not subject to the Urban Water Management Plan Act. Only larger agencies are that actually provide water. And the Community Facilities District doesn't provide water, Casitas does. So the concepts are a little topsy-turvy there.
The source of the water, though, for the city ultimately is not a function of the cost of that water from the bill from Casitas, right?
No, it's the amount. It's volumetric.
Thank you. I have no other comments. I just wanted to make sure we were clear here that there wasn't a separate water company out there that we were unaware of that had an opportunity to create its water rates separate from and distinct from Casitas, which actually is the supplier to those people.
They get bills from us.
All right, that's what I wanted to make sure we understood. And I can't speak to the last paragraph. If you have $200 million laying around, I am confident that you guys can find something to spend it on.
It's 20.
$20 million, sorry, I had an extra zero there, but you have, I know you guys are working hard these days, so I'm pretty sure if you have that money, you've got it earmarked for something.
We had to be careful about how many bonds we sold and how much money we're going to use to refurbish the system. We can't sell bonds and not use the money. The IRS would make us pay taxes on that. So we don't want to do that.
There you go. Is there any other questions, comments, words of wisdom? Thank you for attending. This meeting is adjourned. It is 6:16. You all have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Next meeting is May 31st, 2018.
When?
It says May 31st, 2018.
That's right. You got it. Okay, Rob.